Have you ever been on a website for a very specific reason? Then you click on a hyperlink, and then another. Ooh, look, suggested videos. Next thing you know, you spent hours researching a super obscure topic. Your mind has transcended planes. You are now an expert. So come on the show and tell us about it. Hello and welcome to Hyperlink. I am Dominic Hure, your host, and with us is our new guest, Noah La Barba.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming. And here we are going to talk about Rubik's Cubes today.
Yes. What would you like to know?
Can you tell me a little bit about the history of Rubik's Cubes?
I would love to. So the Rubik's Cube as we know it was invented by a Hungarian architecture professor by the name of Erno Rubik. He invented it not as a puzzle, but as a demonstration that you can link objects without binding them together. The pieces they're bound together because they don't come apart, but they slide independent of one another. He was trying to figure out a way to put pieces together such that they wouldn't fall apart, but they could be independent of each other. And that's what he did. And he brought it to his class and showed it as an example of that concept. And it was only when people started to play with it that they realized it was a puzzle. And he realized it was a very, very difficult puzzle. And he ended up bringing it to a toy convention where his friend marketed it to a company called the Ideal Toy Company. And they saw the potential in it. And they thought, let's put some stickers on it, make it so it's more clear when it's solved and when it's scrambled.
What did it look like before the stickers?
When it was first made, good question. When it was first made, it was made of wood. And it actually had what we call truncated corners, which are, they're like angled. So it had an extra side kind of right here. But they put stickers on it and they made it out of plastic. And it hit the market in 1980 and it just soared in popularity.
You said it was invented in Hungary, right?
Yes.
Was it also popular all over the world as well?
Yes. So when it started in Hungary and it went to, I don't remember where that toy convention was. I think it was in Germany. And that's where the international market took hold of it. The Ideal Toy Company marketed it. They actually marketed it as the Magic Cube first. And that name was too generic. So they wanted to give it a unique name. And they named it after its creator, Rubik. So it's Rubik's Cube, as in his cube. Some people spell it with an X. That's technically wrong. And so it took off in all of the free world. And the reason I say the free world is because it surged in popularity and then completely died by like 1983. So it was popular for about 3 years. And as it died, it started to become popular in communist countries like the Soviet Union and China because the governments there were not allowing them to be imported and not really allowing a lot of news about them to get in. So it rose and fell in the free world, and then it rose and fell again in the communist world. So that's kind of interesting. So that's the origin of the cube. Erno Rubik invented a few other puzzles, which I have here with me if you'd like to see them.
Bring them out.
So he also invented something called the Rubik's Twist. It's also known as the Rubik's Snake, and let me find the end of it. When it's in the solved state, it's in a ball, but you can untwist it into a snake. Now, take note of what color it is right now. Blue with white edges, right? So now it's in its unsolved state, and this is now you can see why it's called the snake. If I twist it around and I solve it the other way, now it's still solved because it's still a ball, but now it's reversed color.
That's sick.
Kind of interesting, right? And then he also invented something called the Rubik's Magic, which is a folding panel puzzle. And that was about all he was famous for creating, but since then there have been a number of expansions of his idea.
And these aren't the same amount of sides, right? Or
Correct. So these are called higher order cubes. These are referred to as n by n by n because the number is the same on all three axes. This one would be a 4x4, and this one would be a 5x5. And contrary to popular belief, they don't really rise that much in difficulty as you get bigger, especially past 5x5. This is 3x3x5. And the cool thing about this is you can turn it in all sorts of cool ways and make cool patterns. But another cool thing about it is you can actually shapeshift it. which has kind of been people's minds sometimes.
This one too, right?
Yes, so that is something we call a shape mod. And this was developed by a separate company. Erno Rubik had nothing to do with this. But this is just how much his idea inspired people to come up with more ideas. But when you mix this one up, you can see that the shape gets jumbled quite quickly. And it has a very cool, modern-looking shape when you're done with it. It looks kind of like a piece of modern art.
Yeah. And there's this one.
Yeah. So if the 3x3 is too difficult, you can always work your way down to the 1x1. This is definitely as easy as it gets. And if this becomes too easy for you, you can work up to the 1x1x2, which is a little more challenging, but I think you can still figure it out.
Yeah. Anyway. What about, there's like competitions and stuff too as well, right?
Yes. So the first official competition for the Rubik's Cube was held in 1982. And it was held in Hungary, where the cube was invented. And there were 25 competitors, I believe, from all over the world. And the guy who won it was actually a 16-year-old from Los Angeles, and he won with a time of 22.4-ish seconds, around 22 seconds, which, considering that the cube was only out for 2 years, that's an impressive time. Even today, that's still a pretty impressive time. And also, these cubes, they turn really fast. The cubes back then did not turn fast. So a 22-second time back then would have been probably sub 15 or maybe even sub 10 now with modern cubes.
What's a good time now?
So the current world record is an astonishing 3.47 seconds. He broke a long-standing world record of 4.22 seconds. That record had been chipped away at slowly but surely, and then this guy came along and just shattered it. 3.47 seconds. So a good time nowadays would be anything under probably 8 seconds. I can typically solve it in about 15 to 20 seconds.
Okay.
So
can you show us?
I can.
Okay.
Yeah. Feel free to mix it up. I won't look. You ready? So the way that competition solves typically work is you get 15 seconds to inspect the cube. So right now what I'm doing is I'm looking at the cube for what moves I'm going to do first. And once I do that, I would put my hands down on the timer and start the timer. So whenever you say go, I'll go.
Go.
So
that was impressive.
Thank you.
Has Rubik's Cubes transcended any other media?
In the height of its popularity, it was widely written about. It was written about by everybody who knew anything about it. Three of the top 10 best-selling books in the United States were about the Rubik's Cube in 1981, the year after its release. And the best-selling book from 1981 I have here with me is The Simple Solution to the Rubik's Cube. So it's an interesting book. It's not very long. And it's got pictures of the cube, and it's not printed in color, which is something I found comical. All the colors are demonstrated or represented by patterns.
Yeah.
But it has his 5-step guide. James G. Norris was a chemistry professor at Stanford, and he developed his own solution to it. So he published it, and this was the best-selling book of 1981 in the United States.
That's awesome.
So yes, it was very popular. And it was also popular among the kids. It had its own cartoon called Rubik the Magic Cube. And the premise of the show was there was a scrambled Rubik's Cube that fell off the back of a car. And a group of children found it, and they solved it. And as they solved it, it came to life. And it had a face and legs, and it had superpowers. And it would take them on adventures. And
it's like the Captain Planet of Rubik's Cubes.
Yes.
Where can people go on the internet to find out more about Rubik's Cubes?
So if you want to see more speed solving is the sport of solving as fast as you can. You can check out people like Felix Zemdegs. He's an Australian speed cuber. He holds most of the world records. If you want to see unique puzzles, there's a guy by the name of Red KB. There's a guy named Jperm, Jperm.
Okay.
He does tutorials on how to solve it and how to speed solve it and how to improve. And then if you want to see some really, really crazy puzzles, you can check out Tony Fisher. He built the world's largest Rubik's Cube and the world's smallest Rubik's Cube, which is smaller than just the little corner piece of this cube. It's a fully functioning Rubik's Cube. And then the last guy that I recommend is Oscar van Deventer. He's an inventor, and he invents twisty puzzles of extremely high order.
Cool.
So I know that was a lot of plugs, but
Yeah.
that gives
Yeah.
you a lot of things to check out if you're interested.
Awesome. Thank you for coming here today, Noah. If you want to learn more about Rubik's Cubes, you can either check out any of the YouTubers that Noah mentioned earlier, or you can check out our companion podcast, Hyperlink by 22West, on any of the podcast platforms.